So this is going to be my overview for the Manchester United-Liverpool game. I'm going to do it more in a podcast format just to get all my points out. But I'm going to be bringing out more videos throughout the week, breaking things down tactically, using some video analysis from the game. So let me know what points you agree on and what points you want me to clarify further. So starting out, I thought the standout performers for United came down their left side, Dalot, Bruno Fernandes, Martinez, but also Harry Maguire in the centre of the back three and also Kobbie Mainoo. I also thought Ugarte was fantastic. He did make a mistake for the goal where he left his position too early. I mean, he could maybe make a case that Mazraoui should have dropped and allowed him to move into that more central position, because that area in front of the back line was vacant, but I think he has to hold his position. He has to have awareness of where players are around him and leave that job to someone else, maybe Maguire in the centre of the back line, to step out and close down that space, because with Ugarte, the danger in his vicinity was Gakpo over his right shoulder. But in terms of who was the man of the match, it's probably out of Bruno Fernandes, Martinez and Harry Maguire. I personally would give it to Bruno Fernandes because I thought he was fantastic at controlling the tempo of play. Showing some fantastic composure under pressure in the centre of the pitch multiple times. There was one towards the end of the game where he just wriggled out of pressure and allowed us to attack into the middle third. And obviously for the goal where he was able to hold on to the ball, wait for the right pass and then feed Martinez, who finished sublimely. And we also saw him drop into the double pivot towards the end of the game, and this is something that I think Bruno Fernandes provides for Ruben Amorim. He can either play in that left interior forward role, which he played in for most of the game. I thought he was very good defensively in that position, but if United do need some more creativity from a deeper position, if you've got Ugarte there, you can afford to take off Mainoo. And unlike either Eriksen or Casemiro, I think Bruno Fernandes does have the legs in most games to play in that double pivot role, particularly alongside Ugarte, because Ugarte is such a destructive ball winner. He covers so much ground that he's a perfect partner for either Mainoo or Bruno Fernandes, certainly much better than Casemiro. But even in possession, I thought Ugarte was very good today. He showed composure a number of times, not just simply picking the easy pass every single time, but he was composed, he was able to hold on to the ball and pick the right pass. But alongside Bruno Fernandes, you'd have to say Maguire and Martinez were the standout players. And I'm going to give my thoughts on their performance in just a bit. But before that, a quick reminder, I do have an in-game Instagram group chat where we do have discussion and analysis throughout all the Manchester United games. This was probably the best game because there was a lot of tactical discussion, but also talking about individual players and where we can improve and things like that. I'll also be doing a Q&A at the start and at the end of the week. So if you do want access to that, I'll leave my Patreon linked in all the usual places. So Martinez in this game I thought was fantastic when he's actually concentrated inside of the box and he cuts out those laps of concentrations from crossing situations. He is capable of putting in these kind of elite level performances. I thought he was excellent at stepping out to Curtis Jones when Curtis Jones would drop into that half space area and drop towards the ball, where because he has 4 other players in the defensive line, he is able to be a lot more assertive and aggressive with stepping out, getting close to the player and stopping them turning, knowing that behind him either Dalot or Maguire is capable of covering the space that he's vacated. And I thought he was fantastic at doing this for most of the game. Maguire was also excellent at stepping out of the back line. He does so very assertively. And for someone who 2 or 3 years ago you look at as incredibly slow, particularly when making these quick and short movements, Maguire in 2024 just seems a lot lighter on his feet, being able to jump out a lot more assertively, reading the game very well, and if he had finished that chance late on, it probably would have been his best performance in a United shirt. And it's not just a fluke either with Maguire. I mean, in that central centre-back position in Amorim's back three, I think it really does get the best out of him, especially in big games. Whether he's playing against a more traditional physical striker like an Erling Haaland, or more of a false 9 like a Gakpo or Havertz, Maguire has shown that from a physical and also positional standpoint, he's capable of winning those battles. And I said this on Twitter in a short thread that I put out yesterday. You can check out my Twitter, Atlantis861. I am going to be posting a lot more frequently on there, so go check that out. But in that thread, I said that Maguire, I actually think, on current form at least, is actually a better centre-back than De Ligt, particularly when it comes to his box defending. I mean, when I watch De Ligt sometimes, I just think he's maybe a bit slow to react, or he's just a bit rash in making his decisions, and we saw that today for Gakpo's goal, where he dives in and completely sells himself, and allows Gakpo to cut back in on his right foot from where he scores. And also, if you wanted to be really harsh, you could make the argument that his positioning of his hand for the penalty is a bit clumsy. I mean, you have to be aware of that in the modern game. But it's not just this game. I mean, the game against Porto, he was at fault for 2 of the goals, where Porto's centre forward Samu Amodion was able to get in front of him twice, one time in an aerial duel from a cross lofted into the 6-yard box, and another time from a low cross where Amodion was able to get in front of De Ligt and finish at the near post. I mean, definitely over the last 3 or 4 years, in total, you'd probably say that De Ligt is the better defender than Maguire, but in the last 6 months, certainly, I would say that defensively, Maguire has actually been better than De Ligt, and I'd also argue that in possession, Maguire provides a lot more from that central centre-back position as well. In a high line, especially in a back four, when he's left isolated in space, Maguire can be a liability, but in a back three in that central position, he very rarely has to defend a large amount of space. His defending is mainly over short spaces where he's got to jump out quickly and move back into the back line, and also inside of the box, where I would actually contend that he has the best positioning of any of the United centre-backs, particularly from crossing situations. De Ligt isn't exactly poor in possession, but I would say Maguire is a level above in terms of his ball progression, just being a bit more direct and intentional with moving into the space when it's there and actually looking for that pass between the lines or getting the ball out of his feet and looking for a long switch of play, enabling United to move the ball over to the space, which forces the opposition's midfield to shift over to the other side, which then gives the double pivot of Mainu and Agate more space when we eventually work the ball back in field into the centre. Dalot obviously isn't ideal for the left wing back position, but I think he showed that he does have the ability to play in one of those wing-back roles, and even though he certainly isn't a crossing specialist, I think he showed in this game, particularly on his left foot, that he's not only capable of running in behind his fullback as he did multiple times against Trent in this game, but he actually does have the end product when he gets into the final third, using a Travella cross with his right foot, but also putting in a few good crosses with his left foot as well, with the cross for Ahmad in the first half being one that comes to mind. But another thing that's been solidified in my mind is my opinion that Agate and Mainu has to be United's starting double pivot. I mean, even if you take one of those out for either Casemiro or Eriksen, the quality declines significantly. Agate and Mainu are just capable of covering a lot more ground than Casemiro and Eriksen. They're just sharper, quicker to the ball. They're winning those 50-50 duels, those loose balls in the centre of the pitch. And I think that made a massive difference in this game, and it's something that's pretty underrated because it's kind of scrappy. It's not going to catch the eye every single time, but if you do that enough times in a game, if you can win 60% of the duels in the centre of the pitch, I'm not sure how many Agate and Mainu won, but they won a fair amount, then of course you're going to be able to recover the ball quickly and just gain more control in the game, and I think that massively helped United. But also I think you can see the massive difference between the strategy and even the philosophy between Amorim and Ten Hag. I mean, if you think back to Ten Hag, not just against Liverpool, but against most big teams, we'd come into the game immediately on the back foot, sitting back deep, counter-attacking, not looking to retain possession, and the players just didn't have that confidence in the system to have that composure when they receive the ball, not rush in to play a forward pass and looking to spring the counter every single time, but having the confidence that even if they work the ball backwards, they can eventually break through the press, using some very effective short and sharp passing sequences which we saw throughout this game in order to actually work the ball through the midfield and ultimately not just progress the ball into the middle and then the final third, but actually sustain the attack as well. And that's a key difference between Ruben Amorim's possession strategy and Ten Hag's. Under Amorim we can actually control and sustain possession, whereas under Ten Hag that was our main deficiency. However, throughout the game, whilst I thought the overall performance both individually and tactically as a unit was fantastic, the areas for improvement were pretty obvious. First of all, as a centre forward, Rasmus Højlund, he certainly has the individual attributes to eventually become an elite level striker. The issue I have is I don't think he's a starting striker for a Champions League level side or a side that wants to eventually challenge for the title. I mean, he certainly has all the raw attributes in terms of his pace, his power, his movement in behind the back line and inside of the box, and even his finishing as well. But I think at the moment you can see there's a disparity between the truly elite level centre forwards like a Gyökeres or an Osimhen and Højlund at the moment. I mean, when it comes to his hold-up play, he's still very inconsistent. There are a number of times where either Lisandro Martinez, Dalot or Bruno Fernandes would feed a pass into his feet, and sometimes he was able to lay the ball off, but other times it kind of bounced off him and United lost possession. And also from more direct passes, whether this is into his chest or his head or into the channels, I know that he was up against Konate and Van Dijk, probably two of the best physical centre-backs in the Premier League in terms of pace and power, and so I'm definitely not expecting him to win every single duel or be able to hold up every single pass that goes into him, but I just think he doesn't win enough of those duels, particularly against elite level centre-backs. I think he struggled against Gabriel and Saliba, and he also struggled in this game against Konate and Van Dijk. He did have some glimpses, especially when he was able to receive the ball out wide, and he was able to turn and get into a crossing position, but other times I thought he was a bit erratic in terms of trying to collect the ball, get it under control, and even in terms of his choice of pass, his layoff. I think he delays too often, he's not as efficient as someone like Xerxes. And that is the main issue for United at this point. I mean, they have Xerxes, but he lacks the pace and the power of Rasmus Højlund in terms of running in behind. I think we saw this in the second half. I mean, when Xerxes came on, there was a time when Ahmad or Mazraoui had the ball on the right side, and they were crying out for a run in behind down into the channel, but Xerxes just doesn't have the pace to do this. And even when he was able to break in behind and get into the position to square it for Maguire, I mean, he was in so much space that he didn't really need the pace to get in behind. And even the pass across to Maguire was pretty poor, he bobbled it into the floor. And so United are in a bit of a dilemma in terms of if they want pace in that front line and they go with someone like Højlund, they lose the ability to link play efficiently, which Xerxes provides. Whilst with Xerxes, whilst United's link play between the lines certainly improves, we definitely do lack pace in behind, and this is where a striker like an Osimhen or a Gyökeres would come into play. As not only would they offer a blend of both Xerxes and Højlund's best attributes, but I also think both are more clinical in these big finishing positions, in these type of big games. I think if it's Gyökeres who's able to break in behind the Liverpool backline towards the end of the first half and get into that 1v1 position against Alisson, I think maybe at least 7 or 8 times out of 10 Gyökeres probably finishes that, whereas with Højlund I think it's lower at maybe 4 or 5. And I think primarily that's the difference between elite level finishers and someone like Højlund who has potential, and he certainly has the ability, but doing it in big games where you have a one-off opportunity and you might not get another big opportunity throughout the game is the difference between elite level and someone who's a level or 2 below in the case of Rasmus Højlund. So let me know what you think in the comment section below, and you can sign up to my Patreon. I'll leave it linked in the description, comment section and on the end screen right now.